Elizabeth, will you please tell them to quit pounding downstairs? I cannot take that pounding, that noise. It sounds like the shot. It sounds like the shot in the theater. Please tell them to quit pounding. Oh, Miss Keckley, where were you when I needed you? You just be gone. You take Tad and you be gone. No, 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 no. No, no, don't be gone. Don't be gone. I'm sorry, those bangings down below the stairs. It just brings it back. It brings it back. And I can't stop it, Lizzie. I can't stop it. Please don't go. I know you told me that every carriage I sent for you never found you. I sent 3. I don't know what to do with myself. I have tried to hide everything that I have felt. I tried to put this bonnet on to get myself ready to go down below to see his body. But I can't. I just can't. Oh, Lizzie, you should have seen the tenderest letter he wrote me that morning. He wrote me. He had forgiven me for my tempers in March. Oh, see, I'm so embarrassed on the way I presented myself in March. I went to City Point, the River Queen. Mr. Lincoln and I took it down to see the men. It was coming to an end. And I wanted to be there, and so did Tad. He went to review the men, and he wanted to go early. He wanted to talk to General Grant, to go over things, he said, Mother, that would not interest you at all. Oh, I hate sometimes when he called me Mother. But I was going to walk and review the men with him. I hated that he went without me, but he told me that he would make sure that the ambulance would have me there on time. But they were late. And then, of course, who do I have to ride with? But Julia Grant. Lizzie, you know what I think about Julia Grant. That uppity. She wanted to usurp me. I know she wanted to usurp me. You know that, Lizzie. She wants to be the president's wife. Not my president's wife, but her president's wife. My husband was elected for a second term. He wanted to unite all if this war would be over. I was going to be with him to look over the troops. I was going to show Julia Grant that I am still the president's lady. It's my position. She shall not have it. She'll have it in due time when Mr. Lincoln and I are finished with it. The ambulance got stuck in the mud and bounced around. I hit my head on the top, which started me to have a great pain within my head. You know, Lizzie, what I am like. When these pains overtake me, I sometimes lose my senses. It's slow and slow. We're not there. We're supposed to be there. I told them I would even get out and walk to Virginia and be there on time. I knew once I saw President Lincoln, once I saw Mr. Lincoln, I would be fine. I would be on his arm. I would look over the troops. I would show Julia Grant and all those that I am the president's wife. We get there, and he is already looking over the men. I would have been fine if he was doing it on his own. But no, there is General Owen's wife, a beauty, upon a great bay, which she evidently manages very well, I've been told quite often. By the time I got out of that ambulance, I was in myself a passion. I went up to Mr. Lincoln and I told him how upset I was that she was there upon the field with him. Oh, he tried to calm me, but he used that word mother. To use the word when he does, when he patronizes me when I am in my passions. See, I didn't mean to be so upset at him. But my head hurt, and those two younger women, beautiful younger women. I felt that I had once again been forgotten. I once again was not seen as the First Lady. I remember I went back to the riverboat. I told everybody I was indisposed and would not take any visitors. I was so embarrassed by my actions. I was so embarrassed I went home. But he forgave me my indiscretions. So much so that when he triumphantly went to Richmond, which I begged him to allow me to go into, he didn't have to because of my actions at City Point, but he allowed me. He allowed me to bring Robert's new lady friend, the one that I had spent a lot of time making sure that he had an opportunity to be with her, Mary Harlan and Senator Sumner. They came with me when we rid those Confederates of Richmond town. I invited them to eat with me at Jefferson's Davis home banquet table. I was shown off by my husband. he had forgiven me. And then on the 9th of April, when General Lee surrendered to General Grant and the town was illuminated, Lizzie, do you remember? Do you remember? My husband made the grand speech that he wanted your people to have the vote, those intelligent and those that had worked for the army, and they would sing outside of the White House, and my husband and I were so pleased. Even more so because I was a little upset with Mr. Lincoln allowing Robert to be part of the army. I was a little upset that he allowed it behind my back. Now Robert was going to come home, and he did not see any battles, and it was becoming over. Even my husband, I was blamed so much from him and his wearied look, and the fact that he had become so pale and skinny. Oh, you read the newspapers. Dad, you even read the newspapers. What was it saying? I was starving him and I wasn't going to let him eat because I was in my ill humors. People do not know, Lizzie. Tad knows. Don't you, Tad? Don't worry, Mama. Mama's not going to cry. Tad knows. I would send Tad to get Mr. Lincoln to eat. When we heard that Lee had surrendered, there was no excuse now for Mr. Lincoln not to eat. So I would send Tad to him. I would first go and make sure that all of Mr. Lincoln's favorite foods, the gravies and such, the biscuits and such, were all upon the table. And then I'd send Tad. I said Tad to him. And Tad would hang upon his father's leg and into his lap and say, Papa, you need to come with me. I have something I will show you. Papa. He would never refuse Tad, would he? And Tad would get him to come to the table. And he would eat. He would eat. On the 14th, April 14th, Tad had asked one of the doormen to take him to Grove's Theater so that he could see Aladdin and his magical lamp. Mr. Lincoln and I decided that we would go to Ford's Theater and see Laura King's benefit performance in Our American Cousin. But that morning, Mr. Lincoln asked me to go on a carriage ride with him. We hadn't been in a ride for so long, just the two of us. He touched my hand and he said to me, the war is over. And the war and the death of our son Willie have made us all so miserable. But now is a time for us to be cheerful. He grasped my hand. I hadn't had his touch so long. We talked about traveling to Europe, and he said to me he'd always wanted to go to Jerusalem, and now we can be happy and plan our lives together. We went to see the USS Montauk. He paraded me around. I felt like I was Queen Victoria. I remember he said, at the theater that night, he was going to wear his coat that Brooks Brothers had made for him. You know, the one with the eagle inside of it? Looked so handsome. Oh, he still wore his mourning bat on his hat for Willie's passing, but he was unusually chipper. I loved seeing him smile. Though, you remember, Lizzie, as you dressed me, one of my headaches took to me again. I thought of now maybe asking Mr. Lincoln not to go to the theater that night. Sometimes wonder if it was God prodding me to keep Mr. Lincoln from the theater that night. But he was hell-bent on going. We hadn't been to the theater for a while, and he remembers how much the theater took away his pains during the war, and well, he wanted to show me off, he said. I wore my velvet cape and a black and white silk gown. We were supposed to go with the Grants. But Julia Grant all of a sudden had to go to New Jersey to see her children. Put us in a very awkward position because now we had, at the last minute, to find new people to sit in the box with us. I'm wondering if she knew what was going on that night. Or maybe her husband. We finally did find someone to go with us. Major Henry Rathbone and Miss Clara Davis. They were courting. Loved riding in the carriage with them. Young love. Made me hold on to Mr. Lincoln even more. We were late. One is I was trying to get him not to go because of my headache, and then two, he was trying to get me to go. And of course, you know me, I'm never on time. When we arrived, Laura King stopped the performance. And they played Hail to the Chief. Everyone looked at the box. Oh, it was a beautiful moment. We took our seat. And we started to enjoy the play. I remember I leaned in real close to him. And at one time, I took his arm and I said, "What would Miss Harris think of me holding on to you like this?" And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "She would think nothing of anything. She won't think anything of it." It came to the third act. He said, on the stage, "You sockdologize an old man trap." And then I heard a bang. I thought it was from the stage, but wasn't. I heard the commotion behind me. So it was Major Rathbone. He was grabbing at someone. My husband's head, it went forward. I thought he was just contemplating the play, thinking about it, but no. All of a sudden, I felt the blood. I felt the blood start going down my cape. I cradled his head and I yelled out, "Stop that man! The president's been shot!" I held him. He didn't say anything to me. Major Rathbone, they said that there's something blocking the door. He was bleeding. Evidently, the man had slashed him, and the man, he jumped right over the box and landed upon the stage. No one could get in. Not one single soul could get in. I'm holding Mr. Lincoln. I'm holding him. He won't wake up. Next thing, a doctor, Dr. Leal, he come in. He was young. I couldn't even believe he was a doctor. He come running in, and he looks and he tells me to let go of the president. I wanted to hold him. I wanted him to say something to me. Finally, they got me to release him, and I fell down to the couch, Lizzie. I fell down to the couch, and then they put him on the floor. He laid him on the floor. He opened up his shirt. There was no wound. Maybe he had just fainted. But then they felt the back of his head, and there was so much blood. I wanted to do something for him, but I couldn't. I stayed between consciousness and unconsciousness. Next thing you know, Laura Keene, the great actress upon the stage, she was in the booth. They had asked for water and she had brought it up to him, and she took the president's head and she cradled it in her lap. The wound. I said to the doctor, "Please Whatever you could do, make him recover. All of a sudden, was Charles Taft. He was coming up over the booth. They were lifting him up from the stage over the booth. He comes in. They said that they would have to find the president a place to lay. But the wound was mortal. So they got soldiers to lift the president up. Claire Harris holding on to me. Major Rathbone's wound was leaking greatly. Took the president outside. Someone yelled from the Peterson house, "Bring him here, bring him here." They brought him. They had to lay him diagonally on the bed, for his body was too great to lay upon it straight. I laid there beside him, wanting him, willing him, Lizzie, to wake up and talk to me. He would not. They took me to the front parlor so that they could tend to him. They tended for Robert, but they did not tend to Tad. They tended to Tad. They took him to the White House and did not bring him home to me. They removed him from the theater. They would not tell me how mortally wounded my husband was. I remember going back into the room, saying to the men, "If you would only bring Tad here, Tad can wake him up. Tad knows what to do." Secretary of State came. He told them when I started to cry to ask him to wake up, to speak to me, to say one word to me, all the children. I started to cry and weep so greatly that he said, "Remove this woman from the room and don't let her back." I had gone to the parlor and I collapsed. Oh, Lizzie, how I needed you. Elizabeth Keckley, my dressmaker, my friend, my confidant. It's what I've been 22. My husband breathed his last without me. I was not even able to see him die. I said to Robert, "Why didn't they shoot me instead?" They waited for a while till I recovered before they took me back to the White House. I did not wish to go into my room. They took me to a room, a guest room that Mr. Lincoln and I sometimes use in the summer when we're not at Soldiers' Home. Mrs. Dixon, Elizabeth Dixon, Senator for Connecticut's wife, and Mary Jane Wells, they tended to me till you finally did come. They're going to lay him out in state. Take people to come by. Then we will take his body home to Illinois, have it buried, and Willie shall go with him. You see how I know that he is truly forgiven. How will I know that he went to heaven? To hear the wailing of your people outside. I cannot be comforted. Lizzie, please take Dad out of the room. Because I can tend to my passions no longer.